Hi everyone, Wilhelm Hast here, and I'm here today with Maria Bernander. Hi Maria.
Hello.
Hi, good to have you here. You've been a participant in the True Effectiveness program. Actually, about a year ago you started, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
that's correct. May last
Eh,
year.
Exactly, great. And you went through the program, and then you've been revisiting from time to time our calls and our other forums and stuff, just to deepen your learnings, I think. So I thought it would be great to do an interview with you to hear, what interested you in participating, how it was for you, and what results you've had afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a simple, reflective conversation, really, an interview, and to give people a glimpse of what we do and what's available. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what kind of work you do, and what sparked your interest in joining up with True Effectiveness?
Sure. So my name is Maria Bernander. I work for the largest translation company in the world with sales since 9 years back. Um, and I have always had a curiosity for being effective and to find tools to make my life easier, essentially. So that has resulted in reading a lot of books and attending one of your previous programs, which led me to the True Effectiveness program, which, as you said, I've done it now over a year, and it's been extremely helpful to me.
Great. So what sparked your interest in joining into the program in the first place?
So what I liked about the setup is that it was a six week program. So and also with the ability to set a goal for myself and to have a framework to work, have that support to achieve that goal over a period of time. So increases my chances of reaching that goal and not just setting a goal and then hoping for it to become reality.
Great. Yeah, so the program, for people who don't know, just to explain, it's 6 weeks where we work in different ways together. Self-study on video, we do calls, we have a Facebook group, we do different things. And then, as you've been doing, some participants stay in touch after the 6 weeks to deepen the learning and build further on their effectiveness. We can get back to that later, maybe. So how was your work and life before you joined the program, would you say, in terms of
Um,
effectiveness, life balance, productivity, and
yeah, I would say I've always considered myself being pretty effective and always liking to set goals for myself. Um, Looking back on sort of a before and after is that I have always been very goal oriented and be able to reach those goals, but it also required a lot of hours at work.
mm-hmm.
So being able to reach goals, but spending a lot of time at work, sometimes at the expense of relationships and other interests. So a little bit of what I was curious about before joining the program was to see if there were other ways of working, achieving the same results, but doing it more effectively. And
Yeah,
what other what other tools that were out there? Because I noted that sometimes I was um, doing things, I was sort of forcing them and a lot of overtime, and not, I could sometimes feel that it caused stress and maybe not working with certain tasks at the best time of the day, just sensing that there should be a easier way of accomplishing things. When I was looking at colleagues and reading out people that were very successful in other roles, just to see like we all have the same amount of hours in our day, but some people just seem to produce more and with less time input. So that was something that I wanted to explore.
right. So how was the starting the program? We watch on videos, we're on coaching calls, we do a few other things. So do you recall first couple of weeks, any insights or things that started to shift, or how do you experience the beginning of the program?
Yeah, so I think the beginning of the program, week one, was a little bit of adjustment, making time in my schedule to watch the videos and to be on the Q&A calls. So just realizing that I had to make time to be able to create time. So that was a little bit of an adjustment, but I quite quickly into weeks 2 and 3 saw that investment by spending 1 to 2, 3 hours a week, that it actually paid off double, and later in the program even more so. I think the design of the program is, obviously there's some thought going into it, and starting the first weeks with realizing the importance of being present in everything that we do, and taking more time than most people do reflecting and pausing. I think that was a really good segue, because that is the foundation of many things and being able to be effective. So I would say the first week, a little bit of an adjustment to getting to know the program, but quite quickly I started to see that things started to shift with doing things a little bit differently, like weekly planning, or spending the first half an hour of my day planning the day, and then acting according to that plan, instead of acting, reflecting, and multitasking, which I previously had done way too much.
Mm-hmm. So did you have a shift in how you started your day and spend time on weekly planning and such, you'd say, or?
Yes. So what I started to do, I think it was the second or third week, was that I, every Monday or Friday, depending on if I was traveling for work, is that I was sitting down and spent at least an hour, if not an hour and a half, just looking at the week ahead. Well, first off, reflecting on the past week of what had been going well, past accomplishments, to sort of see what had worked well, and to go into that weekly meeting with sort of feeling that I was progressing towards my goals. And then based on that, looking at, for the next week, what do I want to accomplish to feel happy with that week and feel like I'm making progress towards my goals. So setting up certain like key activities or key goals, and then having a clear next step of what steps to take throughout the week to make that progress, to move towards my goal, and having a very clear vision what I wanted to do. And then going into the next week, that helped me to be very clear on what was important, so I didn't get lost in, someone trying to drag me into a meeting, whereas I had already planned that, between this time and this time, I'm going to be drafting up a contract or be on, calls or what have you. So being able to have a good structure of goals, and then being in control of my time and not letting life happen to me or have colleagues steal my time, so to speak. Yeah.
So I'm curious, because starting to plan your weeks either Fridays or Mondays, and getting more control of your time and protecting it better from other people doing stuff. What I'm curious about, those kinds of advice, because you was a productive person already before joining the program, right? I'm sure you've heard them before or read them in books or whatever, like plan your week and you could take control of your time. What made it happen in the program to a higher degree than before, you think, if you know?
Good question.
I'm curious. I'm looking as well on these interviews to learn and discover and see more. So, because it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it? Just the doing level, it's not that difficult, right? But people hear those advice all the time. Mm-hmm. And what I think we do is to support people to make it happen versus staying a theory or something. Do you have any clue what made it happen to a higher degree for you than before?
I think one thing that was inspiring to me was being part of the Q&A calls where other people were sharing of them trying and applying the principles and noting the difference that it made in them. So being part of a group that were all interested in learning, but also applying them and seeing the results. Because I think reading books before and having, heard the theories, that's one part. But if you don't act on those principles and those tools, it's worthless. So I felt that the Q&A calls, hearing other people apply them in a very simple fashion, and how powerful it is. So I think the program really triggered the action of actually applying them and doing them. So I think that sometimes the pitfall is that people know these things, but they don't do it. So I think when you hear like weekly planning, that sounds like a good idea, but I don't have time. So they don't, they don't do it. But this
true.
time around, I actually I went into this and I haven't done it in a structured way, but I was committed. Okay, it works for other people. Let me sit down for an hour with not being interrupted and just reflecting and writing down what comes to mind, and then looking at that list, what's the next step, and putting action items in my calendar throughout the week, so that not only did I decide to do something, but I also had assigned the task in my calendar for the week to come. So then when Monday morning I come into the office, I already have 5 set activities for certain time slots where I'm going to do, so I don't have to think so much the rest of the week. So think intensively for 1 to 2 hours, and then it was more about just acting and getting results done for the rest of the week. And what I noted then is that ease and flow, and not having to worry or think, oh, what's my next thing to do? Like, it was all already planned out. So, and it's, I mean, when I explain this, it sounds very logical and easy, but it's so easy if you don't have those key activities marked in your calendar to, just get swept away by emails or call to actions or things. So, I think the program triggered me to act on these principles and put them into action every week, and being focused on one key thing and noting the difference, and seeing the result, and then keeping applying it week after week, and building off of some other thing, and one insight led to another. So that was quite helpful.
Great. So studying together with a group of people and getting inspired by how they applied the learnings supported you to find your way of doing it.
Yes, and I should also note that the group, everyone was very honest, and we're all people. We make mistakes, but when we do make mistakes or sometimes don't, follow through on what we planned on, just having an open conversation and looking into why it happened without it being right or wrong, and then noticing, how one can go about a different way for the next week to trigger different results. So also learning from each other's mistakes and shortcomings was also very valuable, including myself, because I had plenty of those too.
Good. Well, there is a word you use when you speak that it's kind of the way I heard, completely natural for you now, but not all the viewers here might know what we mean when you said, oh, I saw these principles, I used the principles, you just act from the principles, and there's a lot of principles in there. So what do you mean, or what's your view on what we call principles in the program? Because it's actually understanding some principles for effectiveness and well-being that translates into doing versus having focus on doing things. I think you would agree, right?
Yes.
So what's those principles, or either if you have an example of some principle that was meaningful for you, or how you see this phenomenon of principles?
So I think one of the key principles, regardless of what job you have, whether it's work or personal life or relationships, is finding the pause, realizing that you don't have to act on the first instinct or thought that comes to mind. And when something happens to you, it's triggered by someone asking you to do something and you don't feel like you have time, the first thing that might come to mind is that you get this feeling of stress and not really knowing how to solve it. But then with finding the pause and realizing that the feeling that comes is not the way that you have to proceed. So just taking a break for a few seconds and just taking in what happened and see, okay, based on this, how can I act? And realizing that there's several options out there. And when you're stressed or haven't learned these principles, you just think that whatever life is thrown your way, the first incline is the way that you need to act.
Yeah.
But realizing that there's a principle, there is a pause, and you can actually pause and see that there's different ways to act in a situation. So that was quite powerful, and that opened up new possibilities, and being able to see that has also created different outcomes.
Sure. So it sounds like you find a pause or a moment in the midst of life now to choose differently than you would have chosen before.
Right.
That's so. Yeah, that's an example of a principle that as human beings we always ultimately could have that choice, but sometimes we just lose it and we just get reactive. And sometimes if we can catch ourselves, we can choose how to respond in the moment, right?
Right.
Somebody comes and wants us to join a meeting, and instead of saying, yes, sure, I'll come, you go, hang on a second, what's the purpose of the meeting? Or you choose a different response.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting your hands more and more on that principle obviously frees up more time.
Right. Yes. It creates a lot of time, and you don't become, a victim of circumstance. Like you realize that you have the ability to say yes or no or maybe, or ask if there's a different alternative. Do I need to be in the meeting, or is there a way that I can participate and add value afterwards? So I don't have to sit for an hour in that meeting. Maybe they just need me for 15 minutes. So, just can I come for 15 minutes, and then we can discuss where I add value, and then, then I'll leave again, for example. So just that realization that you can ask for permission to, not be part of a meeting for an hour, that could free up 45 minutes. And if you do that, several times with meetings where you're not needed, then that adds a tremendous amount of time that you can spend on other things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great. Well, good example. So if we move forward again through the program, a couple of weeks has passed. Towards the middle and towards the end of the program, what happened, if you look at the program overall, that you remember as a valid something valid for you?
I think as the program progressed, I was very thorough with watching the videos for each week, so I didn't fall behind, and also being like, I committed to the program 100%. So I was part of one Q&A call each week, and I watched the modules. And the way it worked for me is that just sitting on the train or bus on my way to work. So while I was being in transition, having, I found times in my day where I wasn't really, working. So that helped me to, like, in 2 days, I watched all the modules just to and from work, because I have quite a commute. So early in the week, watching the modules, being part of the Q&A call, the principles, I learned them quite quickly, and it gave me time throughout the week to test them out. And to be active, in the Facebook group and reading about other people's experiences, I started to get more confidence in seeing these principles put to work, like the value that they brought to being, true effective, and noting that I worked less and I achieved more. So being more smart about my time. One thing that I also did in the beginning of the program, I set a few goals for myself, and I kept on going back to them to sort of see where I was at. Sometimes I was behind, sometimes I was ahead, but also noting not what I hadn't done, but what I had done and completed, and the progress that I was making. So that sort of helped me to stay motivated and to keep going. So those were a few things. Now I've redone the program, watched the modules again, and so I just conclude the 6th week, and it's the level of peace of mind and focus and just feeling very calm throughout the day, regardless of what happened. Like I'm taking that to a new level, I would say. So that has really helped to, just go through life with more ease, and realizing that life can be quite easy if you set yourself up for making it easy. And I think that that's not something that we learn in school, or that we're taught by our parents, or that society teaches you, but seeing glimpse that, you can go through life regardless of what happened and still having peace of mind, and you don't have to be stressed. Like that's an option. Realizing that stress can be an option. That was not the case, a few years ago, and even more so after this year. Like the level of presence and like harmony in my life is really remarkable.
Yeah. Could you, at least we need to talk a little more about, because that might sound for a lot of people like, unattainable or something.
Yeah.
So I think you don't live a slow and quiet life, right? You're fairly busy.
No, yeah, I like to do a lot of things. So
yes, and you're a sales director for a big company, right?
Yeah.
So and you have one child?
I have one child. Yes, he's 3, so that's a full-time job in itself.
3. Exactly. Good.
Yes.
So how come you experience, I mean, the statement stress is an option is a very strong statement, actually, or
yeah,
I guess you're not completely without stress all the time, but you speak to, there is much more peace of mind available.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is some choice, I can hear in what you say, that has developed over the past year. So could you share a bit more what that's about, or how you see it?
Yeah, I think it goes back to one of the foundation principles of just realizing that you don't have to act on the first instinct that happens. That realizing that if you slow down, there are many options out there, and that when you allow yourself to slow down and be present, you are smarter than you think. Like your brain starts to become so much more solutions oriented, versus when you're sort of up in your head and multitasking and trying to work 110% to just get through the day. I sometimes think of it as I don't get access to my full brain when I'm stressed. So when I feel like I should not slow down, or that I don't have time to slow down, or don't have time to do something, that's when I realize that I need it the most.
Great, let's stop there. So
yeah.
when you get the feeling, and so many people recognize this, that you need to push forward, there's no time, you can't stop, you can't, then that's exactly the time when it's often pays off to actually slow down a bit and push a pause button and stop and reflect for a few seconds or longer. Yeah.
And it doesn't really this sort of reflection and pausing, like sometimes it's enough with just 2-3 minutes of just slowing down and being like, okay, wait a minute, what's the most crucial thing that you need to do right now in this moment? Or if it's 3:00 and I have to pick up my son at 4, I just slow down and say, okay, well, if I have to leave and I can't work overtime with this hour, what's the most important? Like, have I made any commitments to people where I need to tell them that, is there a way that I can, send you this tomorrow, or is it very urgent, or, how can we solve this together? So slowing down, but that pause is usually just a few minutes, but taking that pause and reflecting what's the most important thing at task right now. And that also helps me to remain in being in, like, having integrity with what I promise other people. It's inevitable that you sometimes get double booked, or that you're human and you make mistakes, or something happens. But slowing down and just recognizing, okay, what have I promised people around me? What is it that I need to rework my schedule with? Or do I need to tell them that this will come tonight because I'm going to leave on time, and I'm going to pick up my son, I'm going to be present with him until he goes to bed, and then I can work for 2 hours. And that could be one solution, for example. So just slowing down to realize that I don't have to do things in a certain way. Like I can move my schedule around to still have peace of mind. Even if I have to work an hour in the evening, I do that with joy because I made a decision that's in line with me being in control of my time. And sometimes a decision not to do that, and I'm fine with that as well. But it's something where I'm active with my choices, so to speak.
Yeah. And to me, what you're sharing, it's not something that you learn to do at the level of doing, but you come to see something about your brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you come to see something about your capacity.
Yes.
Yes. So when you slow down and reflect for a couple of minutes, you get way more capacity for that last hour of work.
Yes.
Than if you keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's Yeah, that's true for almost anybody at any time. That if we catch ourselves when we start to overthink and just gives ourselves the room to slow down, whatever that means for us, just watch the impulses and feelings of stress and whatever, because they don't mean anything. They seem to mean. They don't mean we need to get everything done. They just mean we're not thinking clearly, basically.
Yeah.
And if we notice that, we start to think clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we find ourselves again. Yes. Very good. So, what other principles have you found valid? I mean, there are many of them, but one or two actually I think that you speak about sometimes on the Q&A calls.
Yeah, there's two. One thing that has really, I think, had the biggest impact is asking open-ended questions, of being curious of what options are out there. So asking myself questions that I don't know the answer to in a positive manner. So if something looks quite complex at first look, if I'm assigned a task at work, for example, and just reading about this, like, wow, how am I going to get through this? Then just asking myself, like, I wonder how I can break this task down to make it easy. Like, to just put it very, like, maybe not that exact question, but in line with that. Or I wonder who I can ask that has done this before, so I can get some insight into how I attack this without reinventing the wheel or spending too much time overcomplicating things. I wonder, how could I set this task up so that I can finish it in 2 weeks by just taking small bits of time every single day, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So just asking myself those type of questions, and then just, waiting to see what comes up, and then just leaving it at that. I realized that the brain, that I'm smarter than I think.
Yeah.
If I do that, my brain starts in the back, just sort of trying to find solutions. And I realized that these, the more I don't force the results to come, but just sort of, I'm curious to see what does come. A lot of interesting things comes to mind, that like you get more options available than you think was possible. Like you see more possibilities that way.
Yeah.
So that has really been, I'm not sure if that is a principle, but it's something that kind of goes along with the principles. So that's one thing. And the other
is, clarify that a little bit. So no, it's definitely a principle that there's several in there in what you speak. One is that when the mind, our personal mind, is overthinking, we don't get as creative and insightful as when we have a more peaceful mind or empty mind, right? So that's true for all the people all the time. It's like when we overthink and are stressed out, we don't get fresh perspective and fresh thinking and new insights and new ideas as much at all as when we have more space, right?
Yeah.
So you're slowing down and giving you some room to reflect and ask a question with curiosity and don't try to force an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Our minds are brilliant in then starting to organize for seeing answers or solutions. Like, wow, if this complex thing could be made simple over 2 weeks, how would it be done? And then just leave it at that, not trying to force any result.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a micro workshop with your brain, right? So,
Yeah.
so ideas starts popping, and then you note them in the next few days, and clarity comes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also,
I wonder if I could do the same job without stressing.
Yeah.
I'm just, like, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if I experienced more control of my time during the week, like I had more choice. I wonder what could facilitate that. And then for you, it's been a weekly planning and a morning routine, right? So
yeah,
it actually, most insights human beings have come from those open questions we look into or inquiries we have.
Yes.
And that's almost too simple. Because we used to work hard to figure things out and plan and map and all of it. And we need to do some of that too, but really trusting that our minds, or you could say our brain, or our, whatever you want to call it, our capacity is way bigger than the thinking in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We can have insight and gain new perspectives just naturally by curiously looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also noting the type of questions that I do ask myself. So usually when I'm in a state of feeling, like a thought storm hitting me, if there's a problem that I don't see the solution right away, I note that I, in those situations, tend to ask close-minded questions, or questions with being a little bit negative oriented. Like if you make a mistake, the first thing like, how could I make this mistake? Why was I so stupid? Why didn't I not see this? Like, just negative.
Yeah.
But when pausing and just like, okay, this happened. How can I solve this with the least amount of effort and ensure it doesn't happen again? So realizing that's like it's natural for the brain. Like the brain does this all the time, but a little bit take ownership of the questions that you ask to make sure that your brain look for positive responses, and not of saying like, oh, Maria, you're so clumsy, or you always do this, or you're not good enough, for whatever thoughts that get triggered if you are in a low mood, for example. So inspiring your brain to look for solution instead of just looking for why you made that mistake without productive solutions.
Yeah. Great. And two more things come to mind for me. I think you said it a little bit in the beginning of this call also, that you really try to separate time for reflection.
Yep.
And not mix it up with the time when you simply act and take action.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a principle too, right? That when we give ourselves time to reflect, there is no commitment or there's no expectation to be productive for those 30 minutes in terms of getting things done, right?
Yes.
So you have your morning moment, whatever, and you can give yourself all the freedom you want, not to act or call or mail or do, but simply get clarity, right?
Yes.
Yes. And then you are clear what to do, and then you just do for hours. And then maybe before you go home or something, do you stop and reflect again, or how does it work for you?
I do reflections. I would say like every hour I just kind of stop and take a break, whether it's just like, just moving around the office, or just, just checking in with myself. Like, am I being present, for example? Like, am I starting to get a little bit stressed about something that, just sort of monitoring my state of mood and mind, and realizing that has an impact. I might feel like noting that I am in a certain mood and I still want to carry out that task. But if, let's say, for example, that, I mean, this is parents with small children, sometimes they don't sleep. So
Yeah.
certain days, like you have 4 hours of sleep and you still have to go through meetings, presentations, calls, what have you. But just being mindful that, oh, I'm a little bit tired today and it's because I didn't sleep that much. So I have to be a little bit more graceful, maybe allow for a little bit more time of preparing to ensure that I've written down everything that I want to, say in that meeting, or what I need questions to, that I need to be a little bit more thorough with my preparation. That's usually what I do with days where I've had lack of sleep. At the same time, like, I still realize that I can be productive and get the things done. But being mindful of, there are moods, I have highs and lows, and I can still get the things done regardless. Instead of sort of becoming my mood, but more so noting my mood and being mindful of that and being graceful with myself, more so in those situations.
Absolutely. It's a huge difference for us when we start to have moods instead of being them.
Yes.
Yes. I had a discussion with my wife today, who's also my business partner, Fiona, and I got a little stuck on something, and then I asked her at the end of that meeting, it's like, give me some feedback. How was I interacting with you during that time? Because I clearly sensed I wasn't my best self, but I didn't know how bad it was. And she said, well, was I aggressive or something? I asked, and she says, no, you're being righteous. And I was like, yeah, you're right, I'm being righteous. And it's very different afterwards to kind of notice, oh yeah, I was being righteous, like I was in a bad mood, whatever, but not stuck in it any longer. And then it's not much of a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, it's when we're stuck in moods or righteousness for hours or days and we don't see it, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I got a glimpse of it and I asked for some feedback, and then I was out of it, and then the 5-10 minutes, whatever, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So having your moods be as they are and be graceful gives space, and then the moods aren't that important. Actually, we can do well even if we slept a little or in a low mood.
Yeah.
Good. Last question I have, I think, in terms of results. Is there any specific kind of measurable results that you could share that you've been inspired by producing out of what you learned in the True Effectiveness program?
Yeah, I think for me it's quite easy because I'm in sales, and naturally there's activity-based results. So I mean, there's natural loss of sales, that in order to create a relationship you need to have touch pieces. I think the studies say that you have to be in touch with someone at least 8 times, like have conversation, meetings, follow-ups before you are able to convey what will partially trust, and then the value that you can bring to a person and to a company. So for me, I have been able to, let's say, like, up my productivity by 20-30% easily in terms of number of booked meetings. My sales, I started this journey with different programs with you for several years, and it's been I would say, like, the last 1 or 2 years I've been able to get to, like, produce like 20-25% more with 20-30% less of an input. So being able to be more clear I want to accomplish, and then align my day to get to those goals. So for me, like, concrete, like increasing the sales and the value that I bring to my company, and also for me as on a personal level, just feeling like I'm I'm growing.
Yeah.
And I'm adding value to my company, to the world, and also how I'm being compensated. And with less effort. I mean, that's the amazing thing, because for a while when I started my career, I didn't mind working a lot. I found I really enjoyed my work, but now with the family, something the first time around is that I when I came back from maternity leave, I set a clear goal that I'm going to be the type of mom that I want, that my mom was for me, and that I want my son to remember me as. And that's not going to be someone that he's going to remember that always worked overtime, that didn't pick him up on time. And just being very clear on what type of person I wanted to be, and then asking myself questions. So in order to do that and still have a career, how do I need to shift the way I do things? And that was being much more smart about my time and having more like focus on what I want to accomplish. So that has been a result that I've been able, like, I've never missed and picked him up late or had to have someone else picking him up or something. And for me, that was something that was close to heart. And always made it happen. Like, I never let work get in the way of doing that. There's been situations where I've had to maybe like work overtime or, find alternative solutions, but I've always managed to find ways to make that happen. And that's by being curious and open to see how I could do that. And that has been like working very differently than I did a few years ago, for example.
Great. Good. So out of the True Effectiveness program last year, you said like 20-30% increase of results.
Yeah.
And working 25 or whatever you said, 20-30%, let's say, less.
Yeah.
Hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
And experiencing more peace of mind and less worry during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just coming home from work and going home with as much energy as I had when I went to work. Like that's pretty powerful too. Because I think sometimes, like, even if you produce a lot, like you go home and you're just exhausted and just, preparing a meal, and then just, all you want to do is like sit in front of the couch. Like, that's not true, like, livskvalitet, like quality of life.
Quality of life,
yeah. So still being able to have a quality of life, achieve the results that I set my goals to achieve, and still being the mom I want to be. It's not always easy, but me being very clear on what I want to accomplish and finding ways with these principles to align those three things, like, that it's possible. Because I feel like I didn't think it was a few years ago, but finding tools to increase the chances of every day feeling that way. I mean, that's amazing. That's really, powerful.
Yeah, that's what I love. But what we do with True Effectiveness, that the results people like you and other participants get are as impactful outside of work as they are at work.
Yeah.
Kind of goes together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the key is that what we study is not so much what to do and the tools and methods, but we study the principles that underlies the tools and methods we use.
Yeah.
And then the two lower levels are we study how all human beings function, or how all human beings' minds function. And from that, people get individual insights. So you found your insights on how to ask questions and how to plan your day and how to plan your week and all of that by learning how all human beings actually function.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really great.
Yes.
Then I wanted to end this interview by giving you the opportunity to ask me a question. I was not prepared, so I asked anything. What comes to mind right now to ask?
Well, okay. Well, what comes to mind, being curious about you, is, you having done this for so long, but still looking for ways to, improve your program and launch new programs. What is it that that drives you? Like, where do you get your inspiration from to, come up with new ways to reach more people around these ideas and ways to impact people?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I have to look. It's a couple of things. I think I've been fascinated for a long time on how human beings work and how we function. And it seems like there's always more to learn about how our minds work, how true well-being works, not the kind of well-being we fabricate by kind of doing stuff but authentically, truly experiencing being well in life, even when circumstances are a bit challenging. That's always been an interest of me. Like, what's our design such that we can actually connect to that well-being and clarity, maybe even regardless of circumstance, or at least way more independent of circumstance than it seems to be sometimes. So I'm been curious about what gives access to that well-being. And then I'm also inspired by producing results doing less. It's been my interest for a long time too. How can we get really productive and increase productivity while putting less effort into it? So those two, well-being and performance, you could say. I'm just interested in those topics and don't seem to tire of them. But then the main inspiration, I think, is people's results. Like you, for example, like having had a part in, together with all the other participants and people on my team, that so many people like you can find a new level of productivity while working less or being less stressed, and actually saying, like, I'm more of the mom I want to be, I'm more of the dad I want to be, I'm more of the colleague I want to be, I'm more of the boss I want to be. It's nothing better than that, really. That's what keeps me going long term, that I see the transformations that happen out of these principles. And my life also keeps evolving as I keep studying this. There seems to be no end to it. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much for joining in and sharing your experience and giving a little glimpse of what's available and what's possible. And at trueeffectiveness.com, people can read and learn more. Any last word, comment, or advice, or something comes to mind for you?
No, I would encourage people to go on the website and watch the video and see if it's something for them. That's what I would see. For me, it's been tremendous value. I would encourage people to watch the video to really see for themselves, by watching it, that they see an opening where they could potentially take on the program and, take their life to I don't want to say like a next level, but achieving that peace of mind that I'm having, because it just makes life so much more enjoyable and fun and easier. Like, just realizing that life doesn't have to be so hard. Like, there's ways to live life with more peace of mind and enjoying life. So I would encourage people to watch the video and see if they see something for themselves, because for me, it's day and night. It's been really powerful. So thank you for the program.
Okay, sure. Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining in today.
Thank you.
We'll speak sometime on a call sometime.
Sounds
okay,
good.
great.
Yep.
Thank you.